Listen, I know what you're saying. Oh, Jordan, go outside and record. We want to see the beautiful background. Listen, I'm not fucking recording out there. Do you see how fucking nasty it is out there right now? You go fucking record in the rain. Alright. We're back. How you guys doing? I hope everyone's doing well. You know who I'm talking to. If you're watching this channel, you already know what kind of person I'm talking to. I hope you guys are doing well out there, man. I really do. Sorry I haven't been around too recently. Work, like we talked about on this channel before. Trying to save up for the farm. So, I've literally been working 55 to 60 hours a week the last 9 weeks. So, it's kind of been putting a damper on the video. So, I've made a decision as well. And I'm just going to get through this real quick and then we'll jump right into the video. I don't want to lollygag too long. You guys always see the notes I bring. I feel like the notes are important because I read the book, digest the book, make the notes in my own words. But unfortunately, the notes also take about 90% of the time, right? Because reading isn't very hard, but, you know, and writing isn't very hard, but it's time consuming, right? Reading is very fast. When you have to stop reading to take the notes, start reading, take the notes, then it takes a long time. I'm going to start just reading the chapters for now until I'm done with this job. I'm going to start just reading everything twice, underlining everything. Kind of doing more just stream of consciousness videos, reading the quotes, talking to you. I'll get back to the notes in 5 or 6 months. But right now, just because of time and I'm wanting to get more videos out, we'll switch over to that. All right, and then we'll be back. Okay, so we're back to Heidegger, the German autist. Okay, the best, one of the best autistic Germans, right up there with Kant's. Okay, right. And, you know, what really separates Germans from other Europeans, if not their autism, okay? And what we're going to talk about is a lot of Q's, a lot of B's, a lot of E's, a lot of questions, a lot of beans, a lot of entities, a lot of D's, a lot of designs, okay? All these things, man, we're here. Part 2. We're still in the first half of the introduction. There's 2 parts of the introduction. We're in the first half of the first part of the introduction, okay? So, Part 3, the ontological priority of the question of being. Our question, distinctive features will come to light only when we have delimited it, whoa, sorry, I haven't read this in a while. Our question, distinctive features will come to light only when we have delimited it inadequately with regard to its function, aim, and narratives and motives. I'm sorry, still shaking the cobwebs off, and I'm tired. Okay, so what he's saying is our question, the features of our question will only come to light when we have adequately regarded its aims, motives, and functions. What is the question of being? What is the motives of this question? Why are we asking this question? Okay. Our arguments for why it must be restated are motivated by not only the lack of an answer, but the lack of even a satisfactory formulation. Okay, we don't even have a question, the structure of a question properly formulated. How do we even ask the question of being? If we're trying to figure out what the meaning of the totality of being is, how do we even ask such a question? We don't even have the fucking formula, dude. We're lacking. One may ask what purpose the question serves. Okay, why do we need to know this? Is it soaring speculation about the most general of generalities, or is it rather the most important of all questions? Okay, both the most basic and concrete. Okay, we're going to quote right away. We're going to go to page 29, paragraph 3 and 4, if you're following along in your classic copy of the Robinson translation. I got the Robinson translation, of course. What else would you get? My German's not good enough to read the classics, so here we go. Being is always the being of an entity. The totality of entities can, in accordance with its various domains, become a field for laying bare and delimiting certain definite areas of subject matter. These areas on their part, for instance, history, nature, space, life, Dasein, language, and the like, can serve as objects with corresponding scientific investigations, which they may take as their respective themes. Scientific research accomplishes roughly and naively the demarcation and initial fixing of the areas of subject matter. The basic structures of any such area have already been worked out after a fashion in our pre-scientific ways of experiencing and interpreting that domain of being, in which the area of subject matter is itself confined. The basic concepts which thus arrive remain our proximal clues for disclosing this area concretely for the first time. And although research may always lean towards this positive approach, its real progress comes not so much from collecting results and storing them away in manuals, as from inquiring into the ways in which each particular area is basically constituted. An inquiry to which we have been driven mostly by reacting against just such an increase in information. What is he saying here? Okay, I know that was a lot of words. We all know that was a lot of words. There's a lot of talking. What is he saying? He's saying when you have science, okay, let's say you're Aristotle and you're laying out these fields of science, right? In the beginning, you look at biology, okay, and you look at history as a subject, and you say, well, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Are we just collecting a bunch of facts? Is that all of science is? We're just collecting a bunch of facts? Or are we putting a bunch of facts in a manual? Or are what we doing is what we doing? Is what we are doing is eventually, and this is, to put it in a Thomas Kuhn kind of thing, having these collections of facts eventually lead up to a new revolution in thought, right? Biology was one thing until eventually we collected all these facts, and Charles Darwin made it another thing, right? Okay, he was this paradigm breaker. He invented this new mode of being and thinking. Okay, within the basic concepts were rearranged, right? They were reignited in a new perspective. Okay, the real movement of the science takes place when their basic concepts undergo a more or less radical revision, which is transparent to itself. Okay, we went from Newtonian physics to Einsteinian physics to quantum physics. And there you go. These are revolutionary foundations. And I've talked about my physics friends with this. He would say, well, they're not really. Okay, this is kind of getting off course, but he would say, just to play devil's advocate, that they're building off of each other. He would say that Einstein was building off of and quantum was building off of Einstein. I don't believe that. I think there are relatively different ways of thinking about things, and I'm not going to go through our whole conversation and each of our points into this, but that is what some people would disagree with. Okay. The level which a science has reached is determined by how far it is capable of a crisis in its basic concepts. So how honest can a science be true to itself in order to question its basic concepts? Interesting. In such imminent crises, the very relationship between positively investigated inquiry and those things themselves that are under interrogation comes to a point where it begins to totter. Among the various disciplines everywhere today where they are freshly awakened tendencies to put research on new foundations. I'm going to go through some of these tendencies, these foundations, but remember what I'm talking about this. We're talking about the 1920s, so I'm going to read what he was saying, but also remember this is 100 years ago, so you might go, well, in 2026 it's different now. Okay, we're not talking about 2026, we're talking about 1920, but this is just goes to his point. If you bring up more examples, you're just playing into his point, which is there's just more fucking foundational shifts in science constantly, even over another century since this book was written. Get out of here, cigarette. Okay, mathematics. Seemingly the most rigorous / firmly constructed science is at a crisis in foundations. He says, so I don't know much about this, but I'm just going to read what he says, that there's someone within mathematics, they're called the formalists, and they believe that a formal system of symbols, definitions, and axioms, and because math is the manipulation of symbols. And there's also institutionists who, the creation of the human mind built with mental constructs and intuition is over this formal language. So, I guess that's in math. I guess there was a philosophical debate about the foundations of math in the 1920s. I don't really know about that. Okay, the relativity theory of physics comes from trying to show the interconnectedness of nature in itself. It seeks to preserve the changelessness of the laws of motion by ascertaining all relatives, thus questioning the structure of its own area of study. Okay, I can't comment much on this. I'm not a philosopher of science, okay? if anything, I'm just, psychology is the only science I really have any knowledge of. So the rest of this is not, really me. Go to someone else if you want to learn more about this. Biology seeks to inquire beyond the definitions of life and organism and define a new kind of being. Okay. Human sciences have become too bogged down by the historical logical character. I would agree with that. Theology is seeking a more primordial interpretation of man's being towards God, prescribed by the meaning of faith itself and remaining within it. Remembering Luther's insight that the foundations on which the system of dogma rests has not arisen from an inquiry in which faith is primary, and that conceptually this foundation not only is inadequate for the problematic of theology, but conceals and distorts it. Okay, so these are some of the basic concepts. He was watching science and theology and human sciences go through the humanities at his time, and he's questioning that. Well, I'm seeing all these changes, but I thought we already had the truth, he said. I thought modernity promised the truth in the 1700s and the 1800s. Why are we going through all these foundational shifts in the 1900s? I mean, come on, science, I thought you had it all figured out, buddy. How many years you need, guys? Basic concepts determine the way in which we get an understanding of the area of a subject matter. Underlying all objects, a science takes as its theme this what grounds a subject matter. Investigations come after. But since every area is obtained from the realm of entity themselves, these basic concepts are mere interpretations of these entities with regard to their being. So, what he's saying is, let's just take biology as our example again, because I like that one. It's the easiest, I think. You're looking at animals. You want to start a realm of science called biology, which is the study of organisms, right? And you look at organisms and what you put them in these subcategories, and you put them all around, and you make claims about these things. What Heidegger's is saying. Your foundation is already an interpretation, right? Like that. Why is your foundation of the foundation of biology any different than anyone else's? I'm not going to jump too far ahead. Okay, we're just going to go with that. Yep. Why? Why is he saying? Plato and Aristotle are proof then that laying foundations is different than the logic which comes after, right? Because all they did was lay the foundations. What is this 2,000 years of study? After, what is this 2,000, sorry, I had a burrito out before this. That 2,000 preceding years of study and interpretations and additional facts, what is all that? Okay, that's the logic coming after the foundations, okay? Laying the foundations leaps ahead into some area of being, okay? Disclosing it for the first time in the constitution of its being. Before there was biology, that wasn't part of a human being's being, right? It didn't look at animals and maybe come to conclusions based on what species the animal was. We didn't even do that. We might have just looked at it and said food. I don't know. I didn't live 3,000 years ago. I don't fucking know. But what he's saying is, after they laid this area of being out, then it could become accessible to our being, okay? Before it phenomenologically existed, we couldn't think about it, is basically what he's trying to say. Before Plato and Aristotle, laid these foundations of thought out, no one was thinking about it, obviously, right? Like, nobody was thinking about communism 1,500 years ago because communism wasn't a political domain of being in which one could ideologically be in, okay? So, ontological, this is important, okay, right here. This is important. Ontological inquiry is indeed more primordial, as over against the ontical inquiry of the positive sciences. I want to just point that out. Ontological versus ontical. What's he saying here? Well, I wrote that down. Look at that. Ontological equals the whole of being. Ontical equals, or ontic, equals entities and facts about them. Okay, what's that saying? What's he saying? We talked about the mode of being. We talked about what he's saying is ontology. It's not just like facts about things. It's your whole collection, your whole viewpoint, your whole perception, perspective, the totality of all the entities and facts about them. So at first you have the ontical, which is, oh, well, here's all these things in the world and I have facts about them. And then from that I draw an ontology, which is my overarching, well, what does this mean about the world? What do all these facts, what is the conclusion of these facts lead me to about the world? Science fails and is naive because it studies entities without discussing the meaning of being in general. And what we are looking for in the ontological task is finding different possible ways of being. Okay. He's saying human beings, especially Westerners, right, when you look at a microscope and you look at a bacteria, right, you're studying this bacteria, you're studying this entity and collecting facts. But have these scientists ever questioned, well, what is even the meaning of being, let alone like facts about this entity? I've never even questioned the totality of the meaning of being in which the facts are derived from. There's a realm of being in which I operate in, and that realm of being is maybe determining the facts that I can get about this being, or this entity, right? And maybe if I had a different thought of the overarching meaning of being, I would come to a different set of facts about these entities. Okay, that's what he's saying. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it's postmodern gibberish. Who knows? Let's find out, right? All right, that's what we're here for, guys, right? Is it postmodern gibberish? Is Heidegger postmodern garbage, or is he saying something important here? All right. So what we are aiming at with the question of being is the a priori given conditions which make science possible. But also looking for ontologies prior to and which give foundations to science. If our meaning of being is not clarified, our own most aim will be perverted and blinded from us. If we don't question ourselves and our mode of being and what we're doing, how do we know all this science that we're doing isn't leading us astray or leading us to a negative place? We don't fucking know. Do we even know what we're doing science for? Is it just human flourishing? What's human flourishing? Is it just knowledge? What's knowledge? What are you doing? What are you doing? What am I doing? Alright, part 4. The ontical priority of the question of being. Why is this so important? Science equals the totality established through an interconnection of true propositions. I love when I can't read my own handwriting. Okay. Science equals the totality established through an interconnection of true propositions, right? We kind of talked about that, the difference between ontic and ontological. But what is the meaning of science? Who knows? Science is not the mode of being among many which is closest to Dasein. No, of course not. Otherwise, that would have been the first mode of being in which we have recorded history of, right? If it was the closest to Dasein, then obviously it would have been the first one we had. Dasein itself has a special quality we must discuss. Dasein is not just another entity occurring among other entities, but is ontically distinguished by the fact in its very being that being is an issue for it, which implies Dasein has a special relationship towards being inside its own being, a relationship which is itself one of being. Understanding of being is itself a definite characteristic of Dasein's being. With and through its being, being is disclosed to it. Dasein is ontically unique in that it is ontological. Alright, you guys got that? I don't even need to explain that, right? You guys got that first grasp, right? Okay, I will explain it. Listen, what he's saying is how we're different than other entities in the world, and some would say maybe this is just an interpretation, we don't know what rocks feel, is Dasein looks out in the world and he goes, man, you know what's different between us and between rocks and between plants and between animals is it seems that our being, our purpose, our place in the world, what we're doing in the world is an issue, and we think about that. When you're in your factory job, you may go, man, what am I doing with my fucking life, man? What the fuck am I doing here? What is the purpose of this all? What is the purpose of my life? What am I aiming towards? Where am I going to be in 10 years? What? That's Dasein. Okay, that uniqueness about us, there is no fish who swims to the water and goes, what is this water, man? Okay, what is it to be a fish, bro? What is my fishiness really fish-like fish? Okay, they don't do that, man. They don't philosophize. They're fish. All right, they're booling in the water. So, also, what is he saying? Understanding of being is itself a definite characteristic of Dasein's being. With and through its being is disclosed to it. So that also means through experiencing our life and our life experiences, that seems to also be where our totality of being comes from, right? Now, ontology is only for theoretical inquiry, devoted to the meaning of entities. So pre-ontological is the term for being in such a way that one has an understanding of being. So, Dasein saying, so is there something called pre-ontological? So if you're a Christian, right? I'll use that as an example. You have a Christian ontology. Well, can we take a step back from that? And is there a type of ontological thinking called pre-ontological thinking, in which we understand that our thinking is going through a lens, okay? This is why, like, Heidegger, like they say, he's just like this ultimate meta thinker, and because he really did open up the field. And I would say, most importantly, you know, some people may have other thoughts about this, but I think that's one of the most important things about Heidegger, is he opened up the field of meta philosophy and meta thinking. Heidegger is the greatest meta thinker of all time, and people, I don't think anyone could disagree with that. He was, I've never read, you know, I'm not saying I've read fucking everyone, but I've never read someone who thinks about thinking as much. Like, he doesn't just think, he thinks about what we're doing when we're thinking and what it's towards. The kind of being towards which Dasein can comport itself, that means like intentionally putting yourself towards. If I'm in my, you know, manager job and I'm filling out paperwork, I'm comporting myself towards this paperwork. My being is towards this paperwork. The paperwork is the existential situation in which I'm going through and I'm comporting myself towards. The kind of being towards which Dasein can comport itself, and always does, because you're always comporting yourself towards something. Even if you're sleeping, it might be dreams. In one way or another, we call existence. Okay. Existence is the things in our environment that we comport ourselves towards. Here's the sink, I'm washing my hands, I'm comporting myself towards, this is my existence. I'm now comporting myself towards washing my hands. This is my existence. Okay. The existence moves through me, I move through it. It's a symbiotic relationship, right? We're going to get more into that, what I mean by that. Dasein always understands itself in terms of its existence, in terms of a possibility of itself, to be itself or not itself. Dasein has either chosen these possibilities or itself for itself, or got itself into them, or grown up in them already. Only the particular Dasein decides its existence, whether it goes so by taking hold or by neglecting. Okay, you're born in a small Buddhist family somewhere, and you can either take responsibility, and this is all your decision. You can either continue your Buddhist familial traditions, or maybe you can go off into the wilderness, neglect those responsibilities, neglect the world in which you were born to, and go do your own thing. Or nowadays, it's not even the wilderness. Nowadays, it would be go be a liberal in the city and fucking suck some Jewish Hollywood producer's dick for fucking a film role. I don't know. Whatever these fucking liberal girls do, I don't fucking know. Listen, the question of existence never gets straightened out except through existing itself. The understanding of oneself, which leads along this way, we call existential. Okay, existential, not existential. Existentiell, existential. The question of existence is one of Dasein's ontological affairs. This does not require that the ontological structure of existence should be theoretically transparent. The question about that structure aims at the analysis of what constitutes existence. The context of such structures we call existentiality. Its analytic has the character of an understanding which is not existential, but rather existential. The task of an existential analytic of design has been delineated in advance as regards both its possibility and its necessity in design's ontological constitution. Okay, so what is he saying about this part? Obviously, the first part he's saying you can never answer the meaning of existence without living the life. You know, this is in some Heideggerian insight. People have thought about this before. That's the existential part, understanding through experiences, right? But what's the existential? The existential is more, so how do I describe this? Okay. The existential, more the way I describe it is you're born and you have your first person phenomenological point of view, and there's these structures that make up your possibilities in life, what you can do, how much money you have, right? All these things, these structures of being, of what constitute, what makes up your consciousness are the existential part, and the existential is like the context, like he says, like I'm an American, I'm poor, I'm rich, whatever, you know, these kind of things, these existentialities. That's what he's kind of saying with this. I know it's really convoluted, and really, unless you're super deep into this, it's not even the most important part. So, so remember, we're looking for the existential analytic of design, right? But the existentialities are the like the context, right? It's kind of hard to explain. It's just like, you know, I tried to do it, but I think that's the best way I can really put it. Is you have these structures that are the existentials, but the context, so these structures might be family, country, you know, these things, but then the existentialities are the you know, broken home, divorce, the context of family, the American, that's, you know, European, whatever, the more context part of it. Okay, that part's a little hard. All right, any analytic of design depends on beforehand working out an answer to the meaning of being in general, because when describing the existence of design, an idea of being is already included. So like what he said about science, but now towards personhood or being a person, Dasein-ness. Science is a way of being in which Dasein comports itself towards an entity which it need not be itself. If you're studying a rat, you're comporting yourself towards rats, but you're never, I don't give a fuck how many facts you have about rats. You can't tell me about what the whole being of a rat is, the totality of being of a rat is, okay? The rat mode of being. But being in the world belongs essentially, okay? Let me repeat that. Science is a way of being in which Dasein comports itself towards an entity which it need not be itself, but being in the world belongs essentially, okay? You can study a rat all you want, you're never going to know what it's like to be a rat. You can look at your life and the things you're doing and the things you're moving through, you're going to have a better idea of that because you're actually being that, right? That's actually your being, you're experiencing that, you're living that. Okay, it's no longer just a collection of facts anymore. Now it's your being, right? And you're going to have a better understanding of your being than anyone else watching you and collecting facts about you, period. Okay? And if we don't have a clear even structure to the question of being or an answer to the meaning of being, then what can you ultimately really know about rats? Now we don't even know what being is. How the fuck are you going to tell me what a rat is? So design's understanding of being, it's primordially, it equals a primordially an understanding of a world, right? So what he's saying is, to understand a Dasein primordially, you would have to understand the world, okay, right? To understand yourself, you have to understand your world. Because the world in which you co-inhabit, and this doesn't mean world, right, like, this is the Heideggerian existential definition of world, which, there's different worlds. There's the finance world, there's the sports world, there's American world, right? We're Americans, we're living through a secular, seems to be secular, American time, and we're living through that, right? Even if you're not secular yourself, that seems to be the totality of being in America. So, Dasein's understanding of being equals primordially to an understanding of a world, and to an understanding of the being of entities accessible in the world. Okay, so not only do you have to understand the world, you have to understand all the entities in the world. So when an ontology is made by Dasein towards an entity, not Dasein, its own foundation comes from Dasein's own ontical structure, in which our pre-ontological understanding of being is comprised as a definite characteristic. So when you're studying the rats, the ontology you're projecting on the rat is ultimately going to be based on the structures of your own ontics. Okay? Ontics, not ontology. Okay? Which means, of course, when you're giving a report, or let's say you're a rat specialist, I keep using the rat example. You're going to the rat conference, you're giving all these facts about the rats, all the facts. He's saying that, like, ultimately, how much of human consciousness and life and your ontics, not ontology, your ontics, your collection of facts of other entities, are you projecting on this rat? Who knows? Okay, therefore, fundamental ontology, from which alone all other ontologies can take their rise, must be sought in the existential analytic of Dasein. So that's what we need, this fundamental ontology. And we need to get this fundamental ontology right, so then we can study other things in the world, and in order to get that, we must have the existential analytic of Dasein. So he's saying we must understand, or I know this is hard, we must have an existential analytic of Dasein. So an analysis of all the existential structures of Dasein, so that we can understand the entity that's going to ask the question of being. Because we can't let our own biases get in the way of the answer of the question of being. So therefore we need to understand our own structure so none of these biases get in the way, okay? We have to go through the existential analysis of Dasein, because remember he said we have this special relationship to being because we're concerned with our being. But we need to understand the structures that make up that ability to have this question of being, okay? And Dasein takes priority in three ways. These are the three ways why it's so important that we are the ones that are studying being. And we have to look, we're not looking through a rat to understand the mode of being. We're looking through ourselves to understand the mode of being, the meaning of being. These are the three ways in which we take priority. Ontically, Dasein is an entity whose being has the determinate character of existence. Okay? Our being is made up through existence. Ontological. Existence is also determinative for it. So I'm sorry, the first one was we make up things about the world, and the world works through us as well, right? This is why we have priority, because we are in this symbiotic relationship with being. where it's the most important characteristic of us is we exist beyond just, you know, base fucking reactions, but also because existence determines us, right? Existence also plays on us, okay? And we just have this connection. He doesn't explain why, it just is. And the ontico-ontological, which is the condition for the possibility of any ontology. So the capability of understanding that we have an ontology in which we view the world. These three things are why Dasein takes priority in the meaning of the question of being. Aristotle and Aquinas also pointed out this ontico-ontological condition earlier in their definitions of the soul, Heidegger claims, okay? I'm not some Aquinas scholar, so if you are, you know, drop it in the chat. Is that true, or is Heidegger just fucking being pseudo-historical? Probably he's true because he's the GOAT. I don't care what anyone says, he's the GOAT. By indicating Dasein's ontico-ontological priority in this provisional manner, we have grounded our demonstration that the question of being is ontico-ontologically distinctive. Okay? But when we analyze the structure of this question as such, we came up against a distinctive way in which this entity functions in the very formulation of that question. Dasein then revealed itself as that entity which must first be worked out in an ontologically adequate manner. If the inquiry is to become transparent, a transparent one, but now it has been shown that the ontological analytic of Dasein in general is what makes up fundamental ontology. Okay? So in order to have when we have this ontological analytic of Dasein, then we'll have our fundamental ontology. Okay? When we understand what structures make up an ontology, then that's the fundamental ontology. So that Dasein function as that entity, which in principle is to be interrogated beforehand as to its being. Okay, I'm going to read that one more time. But now it has been shown, so that Dasein functions, I'll just read the whole thing again. But now it has been shown that the ontological analytic of Dasein in general is what makes up fundamental ontology. So that Dasein functions as that entity which in principle is to be interrogated beforehand as to its being. If to interpret the meaning of being becomes our task, Dasein is not only the primary entity to be interrogated, it is also the entity which already comports itself in its being towards what we are asking about when we ask this question. But in that case, the question of being is nothing other than the radicalization of an essential tendency of being, which belongs to Dasein itself, the pre-ontological understanding of being. Okay, so kind of already explained this, but I just want to read it one more time to go through. We need to get this existential ontology of Dasein down so we know what is making up the being that's answering the question of being. Or the entity that makes up this question of being. So once we get this analytic existential ontology of Dasein down, this fundamental ontology of Dasein down, then we can ask the question of being, and we won't have any biases or any cloudiness destroying the foundation of our question, and we'll also be able to know the aims, the motives of the question, all of these things, and hopefully maybe that will help us know more about ourselves and more about the meaning of being in the world, and then we could maybe have a true science, he's saying. Alright, that's it for today. I know Heidegger is very complicated, and I know I'm trying to put it in easier to understand terms for you guys. I know it's harder. And for the people going, oh, where are the traditionalists? Okay, Guanan will be back next week, okay? I promise I'll have another Guanan video next week, guys, okay? Thanks for watching this. If you made it all the way through the end, find God, stay sober, you know, find a good girl, all that stuff. I hope the best for you guys, I really do. And I'll have some more videos out soon, okay? You guys take care of yourself.